With the state budget recently passing, the transit dollars keep flowing and the projects keep coming. And for Magnolia County Transit, that means completely rethinking and redesigning their transit system. You see, all county residents are currently paying into the system, but only residents in Bend are actually benefiting from the service. And residents in other communities want transit service, or they want to be excused from paying into the system. To resolve this, MCT is meeting in all corners of the county to determine the transit needs for all communities in the region. And after many meetings, it takes the feedback that it collects and develops a draft plan for a new system. This new transit network would have a hub-and-spoke design, with routes pulsing from the existing bus station in Bend, as well as a proposed station near the university. Routes would connect these two stations together, as well as to the passenger rail stations. In addition to the new bus station, 2 new bus depots would be required to have enough storage and maintenance capacity for these new routes. Thankfully, the budget includes significant funding for new capital expenditures, such as this one and the new buses required for the routes. After months of debate and tweaks to the routes, a final plan is released that is swiftly approved by the county board. And with that approval, shovels quickly go on the ground for the university bus station, and it's completed in short order. At the ribbon cutting, Chuckles glares at Governor Timmons and mutters to Daryl,
"She's trying to put me out of business. It's obvious. This is retribution."
Daryl tells him that maybe he should run for county executive. He's heard that nobody's filed to run, and with that post, he'd be able to push back at all the spending. So in this episode, we're going to completely rethink the transit network. We'll begin by benchmarking our existing system before blowing the whole thing up and starting from scratch. Then we'll build our new system and see if it's significantly better than the old one. We'll also have to see what it does to the Chuckles shuttle. And if you're excited for a transit network redesign, hit the like button. And if you just want to get back to Paradise Bay, hit the like button for that too, and let me know how you feel in the comments. Or leave an emoji representing how you feel for the sake of engagement. But before we jump in, the snow is finally melted, and here in Wisconsin, that means 2 things. It's construction season, and we're about to have the privilege of mowing our yard at least twice a week with all the rain that we get in the spring. But thankfully, I've got my brand new upgraded Raycon everyday earbuds, which now have active noise cancellation, a new ergonomic design, and multi-point connectivity, so I can pair them to both my phone and my laptop. They're also IP66 certified, meaning they're both weatherproof and sweat resistant, perfect for mowing the lawn. One of my favorite features of the earbuds is that they have 3 sound profiles for different types of music, which is great because I have very eclectic tastes. Recently, I've been listening to Kendrick Lamar and a little bit of Drake and a whole lot of Thundercat as usual. I've also been listening to a bit of Phil Collins, Fleetwood Mac, and ELO, and the earbuds make everything sound fantastic. If all of this sounds good to you, click on the link in the description box below or go to buyraycon.com/cityplanner to get 20% off your Raycon purchase plus free shipping. Once again, that's buyraycon.com/cityplanner. A huge thank you to Raycon for sponsoring today's video. Now let's get back to it. Hello and welcome back to Magnolia County. In today's episode, we're going to be completely rethinking the bus network. So the very first thing I want to do is benchmark things. So we currently have 18,300 trips monthly across all of our modes of public transportation. About 850 of those are on our taxis, about 15,000 are on our buses, and 2,600 are on our trains. And one number I want to keep close attention to is our taxi utilization, because I want to know if Chuckles is wrong for feeling the way that he does or not. So now that we've gone through all of that, I'm going to go through and eliminate all of these routes. And then I'm going to eliminate all of the bus stops too. Now, in reality, that may not happen. In reality, what happens often is you'll see this leftover bus infrastructure, but it's just going to make forming bus routes really, really challenging for us today. So I'm going to go ahead and delete all of these. And now that Magnolia County is a clean slate, let's move on to building our bus station and depots. So we're going to be adding 1 new bus station and 2 new bus depots to the map. And the main reason that we're adding all of these is with where these are currently located, it serves Bend and Bailey well. But if we want to get to some of our newly developed areas, such as Paradise Bay, it's a little bit too far away. So we want to have facilities spread across the entire county. So let's begin by building our bus station, which is going to be right by the university. Now, the reason why I like this location is all the students will have easy access to this bus depot. From this location, they'll be able to basically get anywhere in the entire county and even to the outside world. So let's begin by eliminating this road right here. And then I'm going to place the bus station right on Walnut Street. But there's something interesting about this road. There's no zoning here. So I think this might be a little bit of a holdout from the zoning toolkit. So I'll just run a new road right there. And then we'll place our bus station right here. And now we need to make a connection to this bus station. And what I'm thinking is we're going to run a road all the way to this highway right here, which will provide that access that we are looking for. Honestly, it'll provide access to the village of Hiddenbrook. It'll provide access over here to our Snap-on factory, and it'll provide access to our interstate right here. So let's go ahead and connect a highway to this, and the buses will get out of this area a little bit quicker as a result. Now, one thing I am noticing is that we've got this weird situation where we've got a pedestrian facility terminating into a highway, and the crossing is actually right here into our bus facility where the buses would be exiting the facility. So let's go ahead and make a new pedestrian connection. And then the other thing I want to think about is that we currently have parking in front of this facility that doesn't make all that much sense. So what we're going to do is add a wide sidewalk, which I think would be a little bit more compatible with the pedestrian road that we have right here. Now, interestingly, you see this person, they're willing to risk it to get to this parking lot over here. That is precisely why we are going to be making this a bus-only street. So we will upgrade this to the bus-only street and get some of these knuckleheads to turn around. So the facility itself is set up. What I want to do now is think a little bit about the junction between the Bedford Highway and this transit-only street. And what I'm thinking is I want to have some sweeping movements through here and kind of control things. So these buses, we want to make sure that they stay on time. What I'll do is add an asymmetric street right here. And we'll do something like that instead. Now we've got to control some movements through here, but what this does is allow the buses to come through here a little bit faster, which I think would be the ultimate goal in this area. Keep the buses on schedule. Now, the one thing that we're missing right now is we've got some movements that don't make a ton of sense. So we're going to eliminate those now. So with those modifications, we're done here with our bus station, and I want to move on to our bus depots. We're going to build our first bus depot over here in the industrial park in our city services complex. Even if this location isn't ideal, the city already owns it, so it would be at the very top of the list. And ultimately, it also means that we get some transit service out here, which would be highly desirable considering all the city employees out here. We've got to be careful about this though, because we've got to make sure that whatever we do here doesn't make it impossible to expand our bus depot, which we're probably going to do in this episode. So I'm going to try to bring this road in at a 90. And this road right here is actually going to be the road that our bus depot sits on. So we'll place our bus depot right out here. What I'm going to really care about is giving ourselves some longer throat lengths here and making sure that we can expand in the back, which 1, 2 easily fit back here, which I think is probably going to have to be good enough for us. So I think that we'll leave this here like that. And then the other thing I want to think about over here is we've got a fire department and police department and those sorts of coverages over here. And this is going to be a facility that has fueling on site. And we would absolutely want to make sure that if there were a fire here, we could easily get there. So what I'm going to do, we'll just make that nice connection straight through there. And then our final bus depot location is going to be right over here. Now, this might seem like a strange location for it, but it really kind of makes sense if you think about it. We've got what could be an extension of the frontage road right along here, and then some flat ground that we could kind of work and expand into and add as many bus depot extensions as we need. That would provide us easy access to our existing facility over here. You can see buses going back and forth between the two. It also gives us easy access to our bus station right here, Bend, our most populous area, this area right here, and no one is going to complain. That's the thing about building in a green field that, kind of the dark secret of it is there are just fewer people to complain. So this also opens up an opportunity for us. If we take a look at our contour lines, we can see that this highway is doing some dipping things that I don't necessarily love. I could see this flooding. Remember, this is a river after all. So what we're going to do, we'll add a temporary turnaround, and then I'm going to get rid of both sides of this. We're going to slope up to the highway right here, and I want to pull that far enough over that we don't get a retaining wall. And now here's the real reason that I've done this. So I want the frontage road to perfectly parallel the highway, but that's really difficult to do without using the parallel road tool. But I already know that I can make an easy connection right here. Now I can turn on my parallel road tool, maybe make this, I think 3 units is probably the separation that we have right here. Yeah, you can see 3 units. And now as long as I make this connection right here, It'll work just fine. Now, obviously, our farm road is conflicting. Thankfully, we have anarchy. We'll just throw that on temporarily. And then I'll just modify that farm over here. And there we go. A little bit of eminent domain on that farm, which does happen more frequently than you might realize. And those conversations are particularly painful. I haven't had to go through eminent domain conversations with a farmer before, but I do know some planners that have, and they said it was some of the low points in their career. Eminent domain's hard, particularly, when it's land that's been in someone's family for a long time, which often happens with farmers. So now let's get rid of these extra locations right here. We had the crossovers, then we'll get our freeway turned into the right direction. Things are looking good. Now I am very curious. This is not my favorite bridge in the world. We may actually, as a part of this project, see some urbanization of some streets right here. And this is likely going to be the location where that happens. Shouldn't let perfect be the enemy of good, but there shouldn't be a pillar in between these. The span's not long enough, so we'll redraw that section in as well. That is as perfect as this will get. And now we've got to reestablish this one final connection. Okay. There we go. I would normally save, oh my goodness, I would normally save the smoothing to the landscaping and detailing, but I am so keen on seeing how this is going to turn out. Let's just do it right now. And then we've also got to make our connection into our farm road right here. And I hate to do this, but I think it means more eminent domain. And there we go. That should do the trick for us. And, you might wonder how realistic this is. I'd say it's fairly realistic. You got to remember, the DOT likely has a very large budget for this. And that's who would be helping with this project, the State Department of Transportation. So now that we've got that taken care of, look at all of this land that we have available to us for our bus depot. So what I'm going to do is come right along here, right along the property line, and run this road up. And then for our second bus depot, I want there to be enough space, or I guess third. We have to make sure there's enough space to wrap these all the way around, and there is, which means that we have our ideal location. And with our stations and depots in place, let's move on to designing our bus routes. And now for the fun part, designing our bus routes. So we are going to start out with our inner city route, our only inner city route, going from Uptown through Bailey to Clearwater County. So this will be our only inner city route because I don't want to have routes going where we already have train connections. In reality, that might happen, but the number of buses that an inner city route takes up is kind of crazy. So we're not going to have many stops here. We've got our one stop at our bus depot, and then I think that we'll use shelters. And this route will basically go across here, hop on the highway, head up the highway, and then go over through Bailey. And look at this crush of taxis. This is precisely why we need this route, because otherwise we're going to continue to have these taxis. So we will have a stop, likely go up our main drag right here. And I want to go on a wider stretch of road so we don't have all sorts of crazy backup. So we'll stick this over here near our clinic. Now we could shorten up these stops simply by adding a node. But bluntly, it is fairly finicky. You can see by adding this node, it removed this one. So I'm probably not going to dwell on it too much. It's probably just not going to be worth my time. No. We have to. No, it's not worth my time. I will legitimately go crazy. Now we'll create this route, and I'm going to begin this way over here at this station so that the route actually begins sooner. And we can set our color first. This is Clearwater County. We'll go blue. We'll start the route here. We'll make our way over to Bailey, and then we'll leave town. And for this one, we are going to be leaving on this smaller highway. There's not another way to get over here. So if we were going to take this main state highway, we'd be doubling through. So that's just not going to happen. And then we will wrap that up right here. Now, I am a little bit concerned about some things. I've just noticed that the game it doesn't do well with the routing. And you can see it's deciding to hop off the street here, and that's just not the most logical route. Now, as a part of this sort of a project, you might expect to see some smaller projects that might be signalization, maybe removing signals where they don't make sense. So we'll take care of some of that stuff as well. And that's going to make it all the more reason why we want to keep these on the correct streets. Now, over here in Bailey is the interesting part. Look at all the crushing traffic that we have here. I could see a world where you end up seeing some sort of interchange being constructed here, or at a bare minimum, additional lanes, simply to prevent this backup, because it would really have an impact on the reliability of the buses here. So with that in mind, we are going to add a slip lane here and a turning lane. And would you look at that? This has just completely fixed the traffic, which is outstanding. Now, coming back to our route, I just want to make sure that the routing here makes sense. And it's basically going up the backside here, which doesn't make a ton of sense to me. So I'll add some waypoints. Look at all of these buses that are just kind of plowing through here. This makes me wonder how many buses we actually have assigned to this route and if the number is appropriate. So the basic formula to figure out the number of buses that you need to serve a route is going to be your ridership, or the number of passengers actively on a bus, plus the number of passengers queued at a stop, divided by your bus capacity, which in this case at the time of recording is 80 passengers. And that will give you the minimum number of buses that you need to serve the route if you want to meet its current needs. And you should probably add another bus or two to that number so that you have capacity for future growth of the route. So for this particular route, 389 plus 81 plus 67 plus 3. And then we'll divide that by the number of passengers that each bus can hold. That's 80. And we get 6.75. So we would need at least 7 buses to reach equilibrium. But I'm going to tack 3 more buses onto this route because it's an intercity route. And hopefully that helps us clear our queue. And there we go. That route is set up, and look at all those passengers. We're definitely going to have to come back to this down the line. But for now, we're going to pull away from Bailey and start to reestablish our service in Bend. So for our first route, this is going to be a route that connects up our 2 bus stations, which might seem unusual, but I think this is going to be an important one. I'm going to make this the black line. So it'll ping back and forth. And I think we'll have this meet up at the end over here and then right back over to this bus station. I just want to see where this is naturally going. And it looks like it's heading onto our highway and then heading down the highway. But where does it go the other way? It's going through Bend the other way, which makes no sense. So what I'm going to do instead is add a waypoint to this. And now that we've added this one waypoint right here, it should be on the highway. And it is now, so we are done with this route. Next, we're going to create a route that serves downtown Bend and goes to our train station. So for this route, we will come from our bus station, and then I'm going to send this down Park Street. We'll have a stop here in Uptown, go down Belmont Street, go on the rear here, and then head towards our train station. So for this route, we'll have stops every 6 blocks or so. And then while we're here, I'm going to add a pedestrian crossing across this road. And then we'll go 6 more blocks. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And I don't necessarily love this location because we'd be stopping in front of these homes. So I'm going to back this one up. We will have them get through the stoplights before they stop. And now at least you're stopping by a business, but still within close walking distance to all of these people. And that's an important thing to think about with bus routes in general. You want to have access to both origins and destinations. So that's places where people would get on and places that they'd want to go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. And I'm going to place these again by a node of density. And that's going to work really well for us. So what I like about this is it's close to downtown. It's a block away, but it's not adding to the traffic here. And then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And for this one, I'm going to back it up so that it's closer to the trail connection. Now for our next one, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 will bring us right to the train station. So I'm going to place that right at the train station. So we'll have a little bit of a movement here to turn closer to the train station. and then we're gonna loop around here. So truthfully, I don't know that we need to have 2 stops here because we might just loop. So maybe I actually get rid of this one. So let's establish this route. And there we go. That route is complete. And once again, it's given us the craziest route on the planet. So let's resolve that. Now, it is assigning crazy numbers of buses to these routes. I'm going to hold off on doing more work on these until the very end, I think. So we'll adjust the numbers once we have an accurate assessment of the number of people that are actually using these routes. Now, for our next route, I think I want to serve downtown Bend and our business park. So we are going to do something like this. We'll come down this way, use this little slip road that we have here. We'll double up service, and then I'm going to come close to this business park, go along the backside, and then we'll come this way. So it's kind of a convoluted route, but it's going to provide a lot of accessibility. So for here, I think our first stop is going to actually be right here, and then we'll reuse this stop in the future. And then 6 blocks from there will be 1, 2, 3, 4, and I'm going to actually have stops that are very close here because I want to provide access to the shopping center as well. So we'll have one here and one here. And then I think we'll do another right here and right here. And that's obviously much closer than I would normally like to do, but I think it's going to make a lot of sense in this particular location. And then right here, it's going to be the exact same scenario. I want to provide access to the high school area, but we'll have a stop right there and one right there. And then we basically beeline it all the way through to our industrial area. With the layout of this, we're going to skip this area. There's not a great way to provide coverage right now. And then we'll have a couple of stops within here. And I think that's about it for this route. Now, this route is right next to a bus depot. So I'm going to start the route right here, and we'll make this route purple. And this will be our first stop, even though it's actually the end of our route. There we go. That route is now completed. I want to add one more stop. We'll add that right here, right before you get to the school. You can imagine there'd be some teachers to get off there. And same thing right here near City Hall. And there we go. That should be a good route. Now, we're still working on Bend, and obviously the one place that we haven't really covered yet is Myrtle Park up here and East Bend. So let's start out with Myrtle Park, and we'll have a short route that'll double up service here through Uptown. So we will again steal these stops here. Then we'll go over the bridge, and we'll have a stop right here in front of the police department, then one more right here. And then this is where it gets a little bit more dicey. So we could obviously stick along the coast, but we're not very central to everybody. But ultimately, we're providing coverage here. So we'll go up 1 block, 2 block, 3 blocks, 4 blocks. And I think we're going to stop here and here. So on either side of this. And this is a rather dense location. So I do like it from that standpoint. The one thing that I don't love is if you were in one of these townhomes along here, which is a lot of people, they are being forced to have quite the hike. But I think this is probably the best we can do in this area. Now, coming over here, I'm going to have a loop again around Remembrance Park. So we're going to have a higher density of stops. We'll have one right here near our little city services complex and where we have all those parks. One more right here, and then one more before we loop back around. Let's just make this route dark purple, and we'll again start this route right here at our bus station. And thankfully, it seems like the game really likes looping routes, so we shouldn't have to modify this one all that much. It's just doing a weird jaunt here, but nothing that a couple of waypoints can't fix. And for this right here, everything is a-okay. I might actually change this though. It seems like we have an unnecessary left-hand turn, and that would certainly be something we want to prevent. And that is perfect. And then for this last route, we're going to go over to our train station through East Bend. So we'll have that loop around here. And then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And I think we're going to have stops here so you could transfer if you wanted to before going to the bus station. So we'll have those on either side of the road. And then we are not going to have any stops for a while. So you'll go all the way through here. And then I think here's where we'll dip into the neighborhood. We'll stop right here and right here. And then this has to be signalized now. This cannot be like this. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 would be this block right here. I think that should be fine. There's not a lot of density here. The only other thing that we could do is send this up and try to hit up the shopping center. But ultimately, I don't think it's worth it. So we'll have a stop here and here. And when I say worth it, I mean from a time loss standpoint in terms of reliability. So now we're here. We're going to loop back around. Now here's where we got a lot of density. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 would send us right here. I think we're going to stop in the middle of this block. A couple of reasons. We got this pedestrian connection, which links us up to the rest of the neighborhood at a nice off-street facility. And we're in the center of this density. So I think that that is a great spot for us. Now for this area, we are going to loop around. I'm going to have this be a counterclockwise loop. We'll have another stop right here in front of all this density. And then our next stop is going to be right here, right in front of our connection to the train station. And then reasonably, there's not a whole lot of reason to come through the rest of this area. It's single family homes at larger lots. They would fight this. I might just leave it. Maybe we add a stop right here so that we can get a connection across this bridge. Actually, we'll go back because then we have a pedestrian connection. And that is basically that route. And this actually fills up our terminal. So that is excellent. And there we go. We have a complete route. Now, I do want to double check this one again just to make sure we're not doing crazy things. Going through the roundabout, that looks good. Where I think it's going to get a little bit off is right here in this neighborhood. We end up taking 2 streets. That's problematic. That would lead to some conflicts with the neighborhood. So let's just add a waypoint and we just run this all the way along the coast. I think that's probably the more logical thing to do. And then right here, another waypoint is needed as well. And there we go. Now, back over here at our university bus station, we're going to start out with routes here. So the first route is going to be one that basically covers employment uses. So this is going to go to Hidden Brook and the township of Lakeview. This would not normally be a route that I would be super concerned about, considering Hidden Brook has 1,122 residents and Lakeview, I mean, we're not even going to go to most of this. It's rural. But we've got this major employer out here, Spasm, that has over 2,000 jobs in one location. So they may be interested in paying for a route themselves. So we are going to accommodate that and say that that's what happened. So with this route, we'll have a stop here. We'll have one here in Hidden Brook, probably right in the center. And then I don't know that we can really rationalize having more, except that we already have a bus here. So we might as well. So let's do it. We'll add stops here. I had to turn on Anarchy for that one because I used Anarchy to make that path happen and apparently made this thing mad. And then we are going to have a stop here at Spasm. So this will be a loop. So what I'm going to do, because this is Spasm's route, is we are going to add this right on their campus, which I think otherwise we wouldn't normally think of doing this. And then I think as a bus company, we would want to have a stop on this side as well. And reasonably, that's to provide access to the shopping center, but also the other side of Spasm. Now with that, we have everything that we need to get this route going. So let's add our next route. And there we go. That route is complete, but it's doing some things. So we'll add some waypoints. Seems like the bus really wants to avoid the roundabout, which I kind of understand, but also no. Bus drivers do not like roundabouts, but sometimes you just got to do it. Now, interestingly, it's saying that this right and this left is going to be a faster movement, and it very well might be. But because this is signalized, we're going to send our bus through here and add that waypoint. And that's just going to be a much better movement for transit service. And then the loop here makes sense. So that is good to go. Next up, I'm going to send a route into Paradise Bay. So this route will begin here and it's going to head through here. And we may actually add a stop right here. And this is going to allow someone to transfer without going all the way back to that facility. They'd have to walk a couple of blocks. Not ideal. I think we're going to be reasonable. We're going to move these stops and reuse them. So I'm going to add that stop right here. and right here, and we're going to modify that last bus route to stop here, and then we'll reuse those stops. So we'll get rid of those and these, and there we go. The whole reason why we have this here is if you were coming from Paradise Bay, you could reasonably take the route in, it would turn here, you could get out at this stop, go back, cross the street, get on here, and make your way over to Spasm. Is it ideal? It is not, but it is a way that you could facilitate that movement without having a direct route between the two, which wouldn't necessarily fit our system design. Now for this, so we're gonna have a bit of a circulator route, but I wanna try to mirror it as closely as possible so it's very predictable. So our first stop will be here on our one-way, and we're gonna have a stop right across on the other side of the couplet. And I think I'm gonna take these closer. So we'll do every 3 blocks here. And then we're going to turn and end at the train station. So this route will go up this way, and you'll be able to walk 2 blocks to get over here. And then we'll have 1 stop in front of the train station and another in front of all those businesses. So that should provide everyone in the community a nice 2-block or so walk to get to a bus, unless of course you're over in the edge of the community here, in which case it's all lower density anyway, so I'm not gonna worry about it. So we'll make this the pink line. And again, this is going to have our first stop right here. And then there's going to be a whole bunch of deadheading until we get over to Paradise Bay. And then we loop back on through. This route is going to work very well for us. Now, the one thing I want to check, I could see some crazy things happening again. More waypoints to clean things up. And truthfully, I'm not happy that I have to add all these, but I am happy that the option is here for it. In City Skylines 1, I would have had to do a whole bunch of nonsense to make this work. And it's nice to not need to do that. Now it's interesting. I was hoping that I could make a left here, but I think I've restricted that movement for good reason, or it's not even possible. The only way I could facilitate this would be to add some sort of bus only lane right here. And I think I'm going to do it. And then I want to restrict that right there. And that is signalized, which I also like. It does provide some pedestrian access, which is good. And if we look at our route, it's now taking that. I like that a ton more. And now there are 2 more routes that I want to put together. The first one might surprise you, and that's I want to have a route from here that basically mirrors everything that we've already done in the industrial park. The whole reason for this route is right now to make that movement, you'd have to go way over here and then transfer back. That's crazy. So we're going to have this new route. We'll make this the yellow route. And this route, we don't even need to add stops for because we're just adding a bus to a new bay. And then we will mirror this identically. And that's it. That we just come straight back here. And now everyone in Paradise Bay and the university now has easy access to our industrial park. And then our final route is going to provide access to Charity Bay. And for this one, Charity Bay kind of just lends itself to being a loop. So what we're going to do is begin and end the loop right here. And then we're going to have a stop right here. This stop is going to cover this entire area with the high school, but we need to turn right here. And actually, I've made this an impossible turn. We've got to back this out further, and we'll add a pedestrian connection. It's probably as best we can do because we want to make sure that the bus can come from the stop to that left-hand turn right here. And then in here, we've got a whole bunch of density. So we're going to stop twice. Once here by our elementary school, once here at the end, and now we're done with this whole area. And then we'll make this new route. We'll make this an aqua color. And then I've already stopped over at the station over there. So we'll just run this around this new circulation pattern. And the nice thing is there are so many stops here, we don't even need to worry about waypoints. Everything is just fine. And now that we've created all of our routes, we can see that we've got a problem here at our bus station. We are out of vehicles. So there are a couple of ways that we could handle this. First and foremost, we could certainly just start adding capacity at our depots, and that is a rational approach. But what I think we're gonna do instead is go into our different transit lines and turn them down, let them run for a while and see where we have backups. So we can see that some of these newer routes have a lot of buses. I'm gonna turn this down. Let's turn down most of our routes to around 8. And let me do some math. So our initial depot has 35 vehicles. Our new depot has 25. So we got 2 of the new depots at 25, plus 35, that's 85 buses in total. Now for our system, we have 10 lines. So if we give each of them 8, and that gives us 5 overhead for broken down vehicles, I think that's probably okay. So we'll turn all of these down to at least 8. Okay, so I've gone through and I've adjusted the number of passengers on each of these routes, and now we have less than 85 buses. And now what we have to do is basically let this run for a while so we can get an idea of how many passengers actually want to use each of these routes. All right, we've let this run for a while now, so let's slow things down and see where our routes are at. And holy cow, we currently have 28,000 people using our bus system, which is wild and way more than we had before. So let's take a look at our routes, and we want to balance things out. So I'm going to start out with some of our routes that have lower utilization, so we'll even organize it by usage because we could potentially lose some buses there. And for each of these, I'm going to pause it, or I'll keep it paused from here on out so I can do a little bit of math. So I've added up the number of people at our stops and on our vehicles, and we got 259 people. So we'll divide that by 8, and we can see that it's actually 3.23 vehicles that are needed for this route. So we'll take this down to 4, and that should give us what we need. So even though we've got a whole bunch of queuing right here, we've actually got 93 people waiting to get on the bus here at our bus station, it's going to be completely fine. And we basically need to go down the line and adjust things just like I just did. So I'll do that for each of the routes now. So now I've spent a decent chunk of time balancing all of our bus routes. And the interesting thing is we're actually running out of buses now. Look at our overall transit utilization. It's already through the roof. But here's the thing. So I've gone through each of these routes, and for some of the routes, I just had to throw a ton of buses at them. And because of that, we've completely run out of buses, and that's why we're seeing no vehicles. Our new routes need 111 buses. So at a minimum, we have to add 3 more of these extra garages onto our depots. Now, these do cost a lot. It's $30,000 per month, but it's well worth the expense. I think we're going to add 2 of them over here. This is where most of our routes are, so in my mind, this is what makes the most sense. And that might look like a strange way to upgrade, but as I was upgrading this, I couldn't help but thinking to myself, it would look really natural if we were to add a road right here and make it seem like this is actually, in line with this road here, and the buses could get in this way as well. And then in the future, as we add extensions, we can continue to go out. So I like that a lot. So those are 20 of our additional buses. That gets us to an overall capacity of 105. We need 1 more, and we're going to add that over in our industrial park. And for this one, we have far less flexibility. So I wish that I could line this up right with the center. I can't unless I place this manually, and I'm not sure that it'll work if I do that, but let's give it a shot. And I'm not feeling very hopeful. It doesn't seem like it's going to do anything. It's just there. So yeah, that won't work, which means that we'll have to do it the traditional way. And hopefully in the future, we can kind of slide these along the back rather than having it clip like this. And we should have all of those dispatched from here, or a few more dispatched. We shouldn't use all of our buses. And that is our 4 overhead. We've really min-maxed this quite a bit. So I'm going to let this run for a few minutes now. I want to see what our ridership looks like after letting this go for just a little while. And would you look at this? We let this go for a few weeks, and we have absolutely massive utilization. All of that said, I do think it's important to come back through and do this a few more times. As you start to work through your system, you're going to start to see that things shake out in ways that maybe you wouldn't have otherwise expected. So we've got some routes that have really low utilization, which means one thing. It means that as we've gone through and adjusted this, we're seeing that we have a lot of extra capacity on some of these routes. So I like to do this a couple of times just to make sure that the numbers that I have actually make sense in terms of the number of vehicles assigned. So in this particular instance, we're seeing that we probably have an extra 2 or 3 buses on this route. Might have made sense at one point in time, but now it doesn't. Now, one of the things that sort of complicates the way that I like to balance the bus routes is that at certain stops, you're going to see that there are multiple lines with passengers waiting. So for this particular route, for instance, I gave it a whole bunch of extra capacity, but that might have been due to Route 3. I really hope at some point in time there's some sort of delineation between who's waiting for bus route 5 and bus route 3. In reality, what you'd probably do is have the planners go and sit at this bus stop and ask everyone what route they're going on, or even ride the bus and ask them where they began and where they were ending so that we could figure out what this number is. In the game, I have no way of doing that. So the only way that I can fix this is to grab a couple of snapshots in time and try to adjust the numbers manually and get that utilization back to, ideally, I think close to 75% would be good. You don't want it to be at 100 because that means that people can't get on. You don't want it to be at 23 because that means this is costing you a lot. And I've spent quite a while adjusting these routes, and I decided to do it slightly differently than I've been doing it in the past. So what I wanted to do is take a look at our highest and lowest utilization routes and balance things accordingly. So right here, we've got a route that has 91% utilization. The way that I got this to 91% is I looked at the individual route and I wanted to look at a couple of different things. First of all, if we're at 91% utilization, that means that we've got a bit of extra capacity with our 6 buses out there. We always want to make sure we have some extra capacity. Well, most of the time anyway. In this particular instance, this is a large circulator route. This is one of our spokes. And in this particular instance, you can see that there's one stop. You can tell by the big circle within this stop that there are people queued up at this stop. So there are 52 people here, or 51 people here rather. And if this were completely filled in, it would be 80 or more. We can see that there is a vehicle behind this. It's actually at crush capacity, 81 people on the bus out of 80, which I like that you can go over. I don't know if that's supposed to happen or not, but I like that. And presumably, when this bus gets to the stop, it'll clear. So to me, this is a well-balanced bus route. The rest of these stops, there's a couple that have some passengers waiting, a large number, but even behind this, we've got an empty bus. So this is basically a perfectly balanced bus route. Looking back at some of our other routes, I want to zero you in to bus line 2. I probably spent more time on this one than any other. This is the route that connects our 2 bus stations. And what you'll see is that you could go way over capacity sometimes. And other times you have situations like this where it's way under. I could keep playing with this one forever. Ultimately, I want this one to clear and not have people waiting at the stations because it cascades down and delays every other route. So that's why this one has so much extra capacity. We've got 57% extra capacity on this route, and I think that's completely fine. And then in other instances, when you search by the capacity, there are some routes like Route 9, our yellow route. This one was maxed out at one point in time. It's not now. You're never going to get it completely perfect, but this is much better. Now, the funny thing about all of this is after going over a month in game and just kind of sliding the sliders around, trying to keep our capacity in as good of a spot as it can be. Look at that. Even right here, 103. My guess is it'll drop shortly. I mean, this one's now 91%. After doing all of that, you could keep playing with these forever, but I feel like we're in a pretty good spot with all of these. We've got extra capacity in each of the routes. We don't have any of the routes being a bottleneck. We don't have any routes that have 10% capacity or something like that. So this is about as good as you can do. You will have to spend a couple of months sliding the sliders back and forth, but once you get there, you get the system that is really well utilized, doesn't have too much capacity, isn't too full, and in general, I think is going to be good for all the passengers on it. Now, there is one more thing that I'm going to want to take a look at, but I think we're going to do that a little bit later on in the episode. And for now, I want to move on to a little bit of landscaping and detailing. Now, this probably won't surprise you much, but there's not a lot to do in terms of detailing today. But one thing I do think would make sense would be overall site preparation for all of our bus depots and the bus station that we added, because you'd imagine that it's a lot cheaper to do this up front. So one thing that I'm going to do is remove all of the trees where we think that this could expand to in the future, or where other transportation sorts of uses might end up. So just back that out a little ways from there. And then along this road, I think we're going to back things up as well, and then have some nicely manicured landscaping. Try to mirror what we've already done on campus. Now, one thing I want to do is make sure that as I'm placing these new trees, and we will go with the oaks, I want to place baby trees, maybe teen trees, because I just want these to grow in. I want you to see that there's a difference between the old growth and the new growth. So we'll have random rotations that are spacing to, it looks like 20 meters. I'm just going to double check this. That looks like that's about 20 there. So we will place all of these new trees. Then while we're over here, I'm noticing that we've got a bunch of dead trees, so I think I'm going to replace these. Not sure why those died, but we might as well plant some new ones. And then I want to take a look at this road right here. There's currently no lighting on it. I want to see if I can add some because I think that that would be a pretty big improvement here, and I can. It's a highway, and I just think that coming in and out of here, having the lights would be huge for the buses. And there we go. We've lit up this entire area. And then finally, while I'm thinking about it, let's do a little bit of surface work as well. There we go. And I know that the surfaces are a polarizing topic, but I like the idea of having them here because it makes it feel like this property is owned by someone other than the university and maintained separately. And that's why it looks a little bit different. Now, moving over to our depot near Uptown, this one we're going to be fairly basic about again. But one thing I want to do is grab the pavement and extend it over. There's no way that we end up with this little bit right here. It's way over paving it, but I can imagine that would happen right there. And then in the rest of these areas, you again imagine a world where we're planning for future expansion and we remove all of those trees up front. I'm also curious. Yeah, it's completely flat. The site would be graded as well, most likely. And there we go. Not a lot here, but I added a couple of trees along here, some bushes along the buildings, and honestly, we could go even harder here if we wanted to. Oh, that is great. And that's something you could see being done as this building was initially placed. And then finally, we're over in the industrial park with our final depot. And for this one, I basically want to remove all of the landscaping around here. I imagine that that would likely be a part of the process of building this site, removing all those big trees. If we're going to plant any, which reasonably I don't think that we are in the back, maybe along the front, they're going to be little baby trees. And we'll go with that. The other thing is I could see just kind of either extending the pavement here or having really thick landscaping. And honestly, it's an industrial park. I bet you they try to pave it, but we're a modern, forward-thinking city. We're not going to do that. We're not going to allow that. Instead, we'll require something like that where we're actually shielding the road from the lights that would be coming from the buses as they round the corner. And that would be a consideration. The last thing you'd want is a vehicle coming through here and then having the bus shine the lights on them and blind the drivers right there. And then a couple of oak trees, and then we'll just adjust a couple of our surfaces, and that'll be it. And by a couple, I mean one. We are completely fine here. I think the rest of this site, we would worry about landscaping once it's developed and then kind of round up everything right there. I do, since we're over here though, we'll clear some of this other landscaping that kind of seems randomly strewn about. And then just adjust a couple more surfaces. It makes it look cleaned up. I'm really looking forward to the day when the surfaces can have snow on them and maybe when the greens are a little bit darker. But for now, I do think it looks very clean when you have that completely manicured lawn appearance. And it's kind of what you'd expect to see in an area like this anyway. And now with all of our new bus routes established, let's take inventory of what we've done with a brief bus ride. And now, before we head out for the day, I want to try one thing. You can see that we are having all sorts of issues with land value and high rent. And I know that transportation costs are supposed to factor in considerably into whether rent is affordable or not. So I want to see if we lower some of the cost of the routes going through the areas that had the highest land value and some of the most complaints, if we can resolve some of these. So it looks like it is our Route 3, Route 4. So we'll grab Route 3, and I'm going to take the ticket price down and cut it in half. Same thing with Route 4. You know what? No, I want to go even harder, just so that we can really gather some information from this test. I'm taking Route 3 and 4, and I'm going to make them fare free. So this is the Kansas City approach. And we're going to speed it along for a couple of minutes and see if we have any clear up here. And about 5 minutes has gone by on 3 times speed. And what we're seeing is that there actually is an improvement. And I'm surprised. It's not a dramatic improvement, but it is an improvement nonetheless. Now, I think what surprised me even more is that it seems like it's made some of the other areas more expensive. It's priced them out or caused high rent complaints to spread around other areas. I'm not sure if I'm drawing correlation where I shouldn't or not, but it is something that you're kind of seeing. You can see that near Uptown and near the university even, there's a couple more complaints. But on the balance, I think that things are improving. So let's get one more look at our transit network utilization, 45,000, and across all modes. Look at these differences, the befores and the afters. We're seeing growth for taxis, for buses, for trains across the board. We are in a good spot. Now, there are a couple of things that I didn't do that I want your feedback on. We could have added electric buses. We could have also added taxi depots at our bus stations. I haven't done that yet. We could definitely add the taxi stops there so that we interface a little bit better. Let me know in the comments, should we add those and should we switch over to electric buses? But for now, I think that we are going to leave it here. I really hope you've enjoyed this one. If you did, please consider hitting the like button. If you're not subscribed to the channel, please consider doing so. And I really want to thank you for your time today. It's a real pleasure to be able to bring these videos to you. I don't at all take for granted that you're watching these and hanging out and providing your feedback. I really appreciate it. So thank you so much for joining me today, and I can't wait to see you in the next one. Take care. Bye-bye.